Joining me now to discuss this further is filmmaker Ami Horowitz. Ami, the information surrounding Biden's alleged dodgy dealings, I don't think I even say alleged there, they're becoming more damning by the day. What can you tell us about the impact these revelations are having in America? Is it getting lost in the noise because there are so many other issues that the country is grappling with?
Yeah, look, that's one thing Biden can count lucky on, is that this is the one issue is not getting a whole lot of traction because there's so many failures on so many fronts in the U.S. and across the world. But the truth is that he's also getting help by the media, right? Because when I have sat, today, because I do my prep work, Rita, for you. When I'm given a topic, I do my work. And I went through all the different media outlets covering these testimonies that we've seen. And you keep hearing the same thing. Well, there's no evidence. Yeah, there's testimony by Rob Walker and Bob Alinsky and Devin Archer. There's no evidence. Guys, that's what evidence is, right? Testimony, firsthand testimony by people in the room is the definition of evidence. I think they made it say there's no smoking gun, but sometimes in court, you don't have a smoking gun. You have to go by the preponderance of evidence, yet they're doing their job, carrying their water for Joe Biden by saying, look, guys, there's nothing to see here. Let's move on. The problem is that when you move on to things like the border and inflation and Ukraine and Israel and all these other things that the country is actually more interested in, that are actually worse for the president. And of course, not to mention the fact that he's a doddering old fool and can't remember anything.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But you talk about the evidence. Yes, we've got this first-hand testimony. We've got the laptop, which has just got emails. There's text messages. There is so much evidence. And yet this is the same media that for 4 years ran with the Russian collusion hoax, which was based on no evidence, but that they presented as credible. And yet here they are just ignoring damning testimony, damning evidence, and the money trail, the web of companies that are involved here. There is so much to go on. But you're right, there are bigger issues for the Biden administration, and Joe Biden's mental capacity is one of them. He has refused to have a cognitive test.
And if I were him, I would also refuse a cognitive test. You know what he's also going to refuse? He's going to refuse to debate Donald Trump. That's what's going to happen. He's not debating Donald Trump. He knows he's absolutely not going. There's not going to be a presidential debate, maybe the first time in history, or certainly since Nixon-Kennedy. Absolutely, he's not going to do it because it'd be a massive, massive own goal, which, by the way, he's used to doing, like he did with when he got up there to refute the fact that he has no cognitive issues and began to just self-immolate himself in the fact that he couldn't remember anything. And by the way, look, yeah, the border's secure. The border's secure in Egypt, because that's who he called. He called Sisi. And Sisi's like, yo, man, the border's secure. And that's why he thinks there's no crisis, because he was told by Sisi the border's secure. Look, this is not a small issue when it comes to the presidency. You're talking about 86% of all people in the country think that he has cognitive decline, that his old age is an issue. And more importantly, 91, that's not a misprint, 91% of independents think is an issue. And in a close election like this, it can make all the difference in the world. This is not, I know that the Democrats want to sweep it under the rug, but I'm telling you, this is an issue that people are paying attention to.
Now, there was a big development today. The House voted to impeach Homeland Secretary Mayorkas over his handling of the border crisis. There was a failed attempt to do this last week. I mean, the situation on that southern border is shaping up to be the key issue in the upcoming election, despite the fact that you've got a cost of living crisis there. Inflation is running rampant, and yet this is what the majority of voters are preoccupied with. And you can understand why, because the numbers are breaking records every year of the Biden administration.
It's the number one issue in the country, numero uno. Yet I will be honest, I don't think the Republicans are playing this right. From a tactical perspective, I think they're making a mistake. Listen, the Mayorkas impeachment, I was not for it. It just reads as petty. Mayorkas is not the person creating he's not the architect of the border policy. It's Joe Biden. He's the problem. Not Mayorkas is just a man who's delivering the message and executing the will of the president. It makes no sense to impeach him. It makes you look petty and bad. I get it. All this stuff is political.
Isn't that the first step
with Trump?
Don't we do Mayorkas first and then we look at Biden? And yeah, you're right. It perhaps is petty, but I hate to be petty. They started it. We saw those indictments of Trump based on very little. So are we surprised that the Republicans are behaving as the Democrats did?
No, we're not surprised. But I think this is an opportunity for the president, for the Republicans to say, we're the adults in the room. The Democrats are being petty and they're being overly political with this. We're not. And beside the point, it doesn't get you anything. It's not like it gets you some kind of tactical advantage to do this. You just look small, in my opinion. Look, the truth is, I think the same thing happened with the border deal. I think the Republicans should have passed it. Is it a great deal? No. Is it better than we had? Yes. And what you've done is you've handed the Democrats, it may be a small handhold, but it's something they can hang their hat on. Again, from a tactical perspective. I know for some reason President Trump thought that it would be handing him a win. It's not. You're handing him a win by saying, we tried to pass something and you guys wouldn't do it. Look, it won't hold water for most people because most people understand that this failure is the president's and the president's alone. But it gives them that one little breathing room that he can say over and over as a soundbite. I tried to pass something. You guys didn't want to do it. They should have passed it. It wasn't great. But then when President Trump became president, he can go back to all the wonderful policies he had, which kept the border crisis at bay. And by the way, look, again, I'm not saying it's going to hand them, they're not going to win on this election, on this issue, but it gives them some breathing room. There was no reason to give them. But look, this is an issue that's going to haunt them for sure through the election. I'm talking about Black people and Hispanic people. Hispanics think at 60% that Joe Biden has failed at the border, and Blacks are at 50%. That is not a recipe for electoral success.
Now, here's a great idea, Ami. Professor Niall Ferguson, a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, says that setting up anti-woke universities is the only path forward to reform a sector that's plagued with extremist left-wing ideology, and we've seen plenty of examples of that recently. I know Governor Ron DeSantis started to do something like this in Florida. Do you think this is a solution to what we are seeing in academia right now?
It's the beginning of something for sure. I know the people who are actually involved in that personally. They're wonderful people. It's from people from both the left and the center left and center right. We have to look. I am not somebody who says we need to crap all over our universities. Our universities, particularly when it comes to the sciences, are excellent. It is fueling the growth in this country. Having said that, these universities are doing whatever they can to destroy that advantage that we have across the world. And yes, I support anything which will take the monopoly away from these woke universities and the university system, which is so fully corrupt. And they're so corrupt that you can have these three fools, these three useful idiots sit in front of Congress and just spout stupidity because they felt so safe because the system is built in a way that protects them. They thought they can do that. So absolutely, we need anything that could put a chip in that armor. I think we should do that. And this is for sure one of the ways that we can do that, create an alternative system of education that are first class. I'm not talking about these really, poor, online colleges. This is a real world-class program that I think people can sink their teeth into.
Absolutely. You want to create prestigious institutions that value excellence and meritocracy and go back to those values we used to uphold in higher education. Ami Horowitz, thank you so much for your time this evening.